Okay, so we're not gonna dive right in. I want to start off with just a simple question. It doesn't have anything to do with politics. George, it's a Saturday night, and I find you where? What are you doing on a Saturday night?
I'm probably in my upstairs den, dozing. Probably coming back from going out to eat with my wife.
All right, Isaiah, what are you doing on a Saturday night?
Probably watching football, college.
Aaron, what about you?
I'm at Cigar Realm 3 Chopped and smoking a cigar with my friends on a Saturday night, generally every Saturday night, as long as the wife lets me out of the house.
What kind of cigar do you like?
I like Jaime Garcia's, stronger, a little more peppery.
Barb, what about you? Cigar night too for you?
Yeah. My husband and I will be watching Hallmark.
Excellent. How about you, David?
Summer watching baseball.
Nice. What's your team?
San Diego Padres.
Oh, is that where you're from?
Yes.
Okay.
I worked for him for 20 years.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Oh, wow. What'd you do for him?
Started in the clubhouse and then did media relations.
Oh, the media, you can't trust them at all.
We lied all the time.
What about you, Justin? What are you doing on a Saturday night?
I'm probably watching Netflix or Hulu.
Sheila, how about you?
Keeping up appearances. Hyacinth Bucket. She's my hero.
That's great. Pat, what about you? What are you doing on a Saturday night?
I'm trying to empty my DVR that shows that I missed during the week. I catch them up on the weekend.
Is there one you have to watch above all the other ones?
Well, I watch all the Chicago fires, and then everything else comes after that.
The correct answer is Face the Nation.
Yeah, well, you watch that in real time, you see, and you patiently sit through the commercials, writing down all the products you should buy. Sinu, what about you? What are you doing on a Saturday night?
Most likely at a friend's house, dinner with other friends.
And what about you, Charles? What are you doing on a Saturday night?
I'll be in my workshop working on some broken equipment.
What kind of equipment?
I collect damaged and worn out construction equipment and rebuild it as a hobby, as a business. I like hobbies that pay for themselves.
Right, yeah, that's good. Gina, what about you?
Watching TV.
Yeah, any particular show?
I like the OWN network, and so I like Sweetie Pies, and I like just some of the regular shows. I'm just catching up on TV.
Excellent. All right. Well, now we'll go into the world of politics. George, give me a word or phrase to explain. Give me your sense in a word or a phrase of how the country's doing right now.
I think the country is very divided to a certain extent. And I think it starts from our politicians right on down. I saw a coined phrase today called political contempt, talking about the back and forth, the language being used by our politicians. It's amazing that they get anything done. It seems like it's just a fight to one election to the next.
Isaiah, what about you? A word or phrase that describes our country right now?
A word or a phrase?
A word or phrase, yeah.
Turmoil. And I say that because a lot of the institutional checks and balances are not functioning as they did in the past. The turmoil, to me, it was built into the system, but somewhere along the line it all comes together. After the election, the politicians, the parties, even the people used to come together to ensure that the country got the benefits of whichever side won. Right now, if you lose, you don't lose. You just fight, fight, fight. You fuss, fuss, fuss. Obstruction is now a technique. Failure is something to promote if it's on the other guys. And truth is all of a sudden alternative. We are into a period called alternative facts. I never heard that before.
Gina, what about you? A word or a phrase to describe the country right now?
I feel like everybody is sitting on pins and needles, so it's sort of like waiting. I feel like we have to be hopeful. We don't have a choice. I mean, we can't look every day and expect doom to happen. So I think that we have to just kind of wait it out and see and just hope for the best.
Charles, what about you? A word or phrase to describe the country right now?
Volatility, turmoil, and chaos.
David, what about you?
Polarization and chaotic.
Barb, what about you?
Frustration. A lot of people are afraid too.
You say a lot of people are afraid.
Yeah, they don't know what's going to happen.
Aaron, what about you? A word or a phrase?
I think the words change. We've got a president who very clearly does things in a different way, and is surrounded by a team that does things in a different way. They're going about keeping their campaign promises, but they communicate them in a different way. And this is the first president, and the first real Twitter president who communicates directly to the people and gets beyond, is unfiltered.
Justin, what about you? A word or a phrase that describes the country right now?
Angry. I think a lot of people are angry. A lot of people base their vote on their anger, and now a lot of people are fighting back with their anger against the vote for Donald Trump. So, my anger.
Pat, give me a word or a phrase that you think describes the country right now.
I would say scary, because people really don't know what to expect. There are promises that are made, and they don't know if they're going to be kept, or what is going to happen if they're kept. So I think people are just kind of afraid, scared and afraid right now.
I'd say a mass confusion. I think they promised us that they're going to drain the swamp, but instead, I think we're getting more of the same.
More swamp dwellers?
Yes.
Who here thinks Twitter was mentioned? Who here thinks the Twitter presidency is a good idea? A show of hands. Who thinks that's a good thing? And who doesn't think it's a good thing? All right, let's start with the pro case. Aaron, go ahead. You mentioned it, so give me a.
No, I think regardless of what he's saying what he thinks directly to the people, and it's obviously directly what he thinks. There's no reports that somebody is filtering what he's saying. He may say, and it's only 140 characters, so he may say things in a manner on it that people don't quite understand what he means. But I think it's a good thing to have that kind of access today, because you have access to information in every other format. Why shouldn't you be able to have access to your president or your other elected officials that easily?
David, what do you think?
I think it's a bad thing because he tweets without thinking, or just first thing in his mind, whether it's correct, whether it's an alternative fact, or it's something he's just making up. That it needs to be filtered so that he's delivering a constant message and an accurate message, not just off of the wall here, off of the wall there, off of the ceiling tomorrow. He's at the point you can't trust anything he says in any of the tweets.
Sino, you in?
As a leader of a free country, I think he has to be a little bit more cautious in what he is tweeting, or at least be a little more professional about, his messages. Because it's not just the U.S. that's watching and listening, it's the rest of the world.
Justin, what's the thing that surprised you the most about President Trump?
I guess I shouldn't be surprised by this, but just going back to Twitter, I mean, it can be good if he could stick to certain political issues, but I frankly found it embarrassing when he's trolling Arnold Schwarzenegger because the ratings were in the toilet. I mean, the leader of the free world is using Twitter to mock Arnold Schwarzenegger because the ratings aren't good for his version of Celebrity Apprentice. I feel like that is highly embarrassing, and that's just one example of him just going down a path he should never go down.
George, what's impressed you the most about the president?
Now that he won.
Since becoming president, what's impressed you the most about him?
The energy that the man has. I agree with a lot of the comments about Twitter, and don't get me wrong, I mean, I think he needs to listen a little bit more to some of his advisors. It's his sheer energy. He seems relentless. I mean, day after day, it's always something, and he has a way. Yes, and I don't like all the comments he makes on Twitter, but you can't. He's always the news, 24/7. He absorbs all the air out of the room.
Let's have a show of hands. Who here feels more secure than they did on Election Day?
Depends on what time you're talking about.
Charles, why do you feel, who'd you vote for on Election Day, Charles, and why do you feel more secure?
I voted for Donald Trump. I don't believe in this country we should have any political dynasties of either party. Donald Trump truly is an outsider, and as has been said, that he has tremendous energy. And but as far as the Twitter goes, the Twitter that's just a platform. I mean, it's how it's used. It's what makes a difference. I mean, Mr. Trump has used the Twitter to throw out some nonsense that gets his enemies and people that do not support his position running off on a wild goose chase, fact-checking this and fact-checking that and protesting this. It's something that doesn't really matter while he quietly behind the scenes takes care of business and gets things done. I would never have thought of that strategy, but I consider that an extremely risky strategy because I think he's going to take it too far. I think in several instances, he's already taken it too far. He needs to back off on that. I mean, he's had some great successes using that strategy, but if he keeps upping the ante on that, it's going to backfire. I mean, in a major way.
Pat, what do you think about, since the election, since the inauguration, what's your impression been of President Trump?
I don't think he is made us feel any safer simply because it's just not within the United States. It's the perception and the other leaders of other countries. Some of them don't want him to come to their country simply because of his tweeting and some of his policies they don't agree with, and it's just the turmoil that he's brought into all the within this country, and they don't want it in their country.
Barb, if you had to give the president advice, what advice would you give him?
To think before you speak, or Twitter.
Gina, one of the ideas of the Trump presidency was that he's new at the job. He's going to have people around him. He's going to have people give him counsel and guidance and have him do the right thing. Have you seen that in the first month or so that he's been in office?
No. And I think that's important to have good people around you, but you got to have the good people first. So when there's turmoil about who's going to be the advisor and who's going to be this, and they haven't really decided, then that's putting it off at a shaky foot. You have to have those strong people from the beginning to be there. And you should take time to get those strong people instead of just putting people out there, and then people are going to question you the more that you put someone that's not qualified or people don't approve, the more they're going to question you. So I think he should have just kind of taken his time and got some strong people around him, and then that would make America feel better.
Sheila, when the president wakes up every morning, what do you think he's thinking about?
Himself. He reminds me of, and probably some of the women here remember this type from middle school on, girls who did nothing but think about their wedding. They were planning the venue and the groom was secondary, the dress and the bridesmaids' dresses, and they didn't even have a groom in mind, but they were planning that. And all of the energy went into that wedding, to the pomp, to the ceremony, and actually being married and making it work was so far to the back that they just kept coming back to wanting to redo the wedding, wanting to entertain lavishly, and that type of thing. They still weren't thinking about being married. And he's not thinking about being president.
Who here thinks that Donald Trump will just be a one-term president? Show of hands. Okay, so about half of you. Let's think of, for those of you who voted for Donald Trump, what was the promise of his presidency? Charles?
Well, it is his drain the swamp, in which I took to mean the control of the regulations that have abounded under the previous administration. That's just, so many people in the country have no concept of what it takes to in cost to comply with all of these government regulations because they've never had a business, they've never run a business. Donald Trump at least knows what the consequences of what all of these regulations mean to, particularly for small businesses that just can't hire somebody to monitor all this stuff. The money's not there. I voted for Donald Trump because I thought he was serious about rolling back some of this regulation that really isn't necessary.
What about you, Aaron?
For me, it was the promise of change and to do things differently, but also the hope I had election night was that he would go about doing the things I liked that he promised, like repealing and replacing Obamacare. And for me, Obamacare is very personal. My mother is in the middle of a cancer battle, and she got a notification in the middle of chemo that her rates were about to go up around $1,300 a month. So for me, I'm going, anything is better than that system. We had to start a GoFundMe account to help my mother. Something the president can do on this by changing that system is going to make it better for my mother. And it was that personal to me.
Isaiah, if you could ask the president a question, what question would you ask him?
I would ask Mr. Trump, why would he want to be the president? To me, Trump would think that's a step backward from his perspective of the world. It doesn't pay anything near the money I'm sure he's used to dealing with. So it kind of reminds me he's more about power than about being a public servant to all the people. If you want to be a public servant, you need to be public in your perception of the job. You can't be a CEO of the public. Because, the janitors and the trash collectors, they don't have very much in common with Wall Street. You can't do it all. I'm saying I prefer, as the Constitution says, we the people, not some, not the good, the bad, all of us have a stake in what happens to our country. I don't think that even phases Mr. Trump at all.
Pat?
I don't think Mr. Trump expected to be president. I think it started off as like, okay, I'm going to run for president. And it got caught up. And he kept going and never expected to get to that level. And once he got nominated, and I think at any time he expected to be said, no, we can't have this person. And he just kept going until at the point where there was no point of no return. I mean, you're president now, so I think he looked at it as another reality show.
David, what gives you hope?
Hope is we will change presidents somewhere down the line. I like some of what Trump wants to do, and some of what he wants to do scares me to death.
What do you like?
Immigration.
What about it?
Let's secure the borders. Let's rein in all of the people coming into the country without documents. The simple fact that they're here makes them a criminal. I don't understand I'm not a criminal. Well, you're in the country illegally, that makes you a criminal. And I would ask people, do you lock your doors at night? Or do you just open a door and say, here's a sign, come on in, take my food, watch my TV, I'll buy you dinner, here's some groceries. Nobody in this country does that. We lock our doors for various reasons. We need to lock the border. Let the people come in legally. The country is built on immigrants, but do it properly.
Barb, what gives you hope?
That he'll put a conservative Supreme Court justice in place.
And do you like the man he's picked? Judge Neil Gorsuch is his
Yes.
nominee.
Yes, I do.
Let's talk a little bit about priorities. Justin, what's the most important issue for you? Is there one issue that's the most important for you?
Jobs. That's the most important thing to me by far. And it's not for me. I have a job, I'm fine with it, but it's for my fellow Americans. A lot of people are still suffering. We all know that both administrations, whether Democratic, Republican, have been toying with the unemployment numbers. We all know it's a lot higher than what they like to publish. And for a lot of the jobs that were created, I saw a number of studies showing that they don't pay nearly as much as many of the jobs that were lost in 08 or 09. So I would really hope that instead of tweeting about Arnold Schwarzenegger or various other things that have nothing to do with what's going on, that President Trump would really focus on doing all he can to get more people back to work.
Gina, what's the number one issue for you?
Well, as a businessman, I was hoping that he would be able to control the finances better. I watched The Apprentice. It was one of my favorite shows, believe it or not. And I liked him on the show. I liked his position, his energy. I didn't vote for him, but I just felt like he should come from a financial background, and that's what we need. And
Sinu, what about you? Most important priority?
As an educator, I would say education is one of the more priorities in this country. I believe that education should be at the state and local level, that the federal government come out of the education, because I think state and local governments can do a better job of educating their citizens than the federal government can.
Quickly on that point, President Trump has named somebody to be Secretary of Education who's a big proponent of school choice. Who here likes the idea of school choice? All right. Did you want to jump in, David, where you were on the question of priorities?
Priorities for me is Social Security and retirement. That my Social Security must be protected. My wife's retirement from the government must be protected. That it's not fair to put in all the years and then have it, oh, well, by the way, we just lied to you for 40 years. And Social Security is not an entitlement. Social Security, we paid Social Security taxes, and if our presidents from the time of, I think, Reagan had left Social Security alone, the funding would be simple. They keep robbing it to pay for other things.
George, what's a big priority for you?
I would say the economy and jobs is my biggest, would be my biggest, what I would hope that he would address first, probably followed by taxes and to address the deficiencies of Obamacare. I mean, it's clearly broken. There were a lot of promises made with Obamacare, but that's so intertwined with our tax code, the provisions in that they can't, you really have to address both at one time, as I said.
Charles, do you want to?
Well, I wanted to concur with what he just said. To me, the priority is to get the economy moving again. We see there are jobs being created, but yet the unemployment rate goes up. What that means is people that had given up looking for work now see, well, maybe things have changed. Maybe there really is a chance for me. And people are coming back into the workforce that had been scratched off by the way the numbers are tabulated in the unemployment figures. Jobs being created, but yet the unemployment rate goes up. I think that's a great thing. People are coming back into the economy that had given up. And that's what we need. I mean, that's to pay for all of these programs, we need people to be working and paying taxes. And the best way to do that is to give them a job.
Aaron, the stock market is going up. The president is pointing to that as a sign of success. Do you think the stock market rising is a good indicator that things are going well in America?
I think it's an indicator that there's a lot of optimism about the future. You know, when the market's pessimistic, it goes down. When it's optimistic, it goes up. And I think the reason is that there's been a very big signal by the administration that regulations are going to be cut down. It's going to be easier to do business. And I really wish I had bought stock the day before the election, because I'd be wearing a nicer watch, maybe.
What would you have bought stock in?
Well, see, hindsight's 20/20, but the bank stock went up, way up, and I
now,
guess
if the banks are doing better, what does that mean?
It means you could get a house easier, in my mind.
David, do you have a thought about that?
Well, with the banks doing better, Trump has promised to take away the regulations. He took away the regulation that your financial advisor has to have your best interests at heart, not his. He said, well, your financial advisor is there to make money. It's okay for him to churn your accounts so he makes money. We don't care if you do. Well, the banks, that's part of the banking system. And without that regulation, middle America's dead.
So you think the banks are going up because they've got a nice, things are going to be easier for them, but not for
Yes.
everybody else?
Yes.
Who else feels, we're going to get some big tax reform in probably coming out of the Congress. When you all think about that, does anybody have a strong feeling about who's going to be the beneficiary of that tax reform, Sino?
Based on the current administration's point of view, I believe the wealthy, the top wealthy, are going to be the greatest benefactors, while the middle class gets squeezed yet even more. And I think, the trickle-down concept hasn't worked. And I believe the middle class deserves the tax break more than any other group.
Yes.
I think another business group that will benefit will be small businesses. I think small business has been hurt greatly by a lot of these regulations and stuff, and it will free up money. They're not able to get loans to support their businesses, and I think that's the one that would help the most, would be especially small businesses.
Pat, do you think we're going to have a big conversation about Obamacare and getting rid of it or replacing it or repealing it? What's your feeling about how that's all going to turn out?
Personally, I think Obamacare should be fixed. Obviously, when it was created and it came into law, it wasn't everything that Obama wanted. He had to make concessions to get what is now in place. So I think going forward, there are clearly things that need to be changed and fixed about the plan. And replacing it with what? I have not heard anybody say what they plan to replace it with.
Well, here's, Sinu, I'll let you jump in a second, but here's what, I'd like everybody to listen to this and see if you think this is going to happen. Here's what the president has promised for the replacement of Obamacare. He says his replacement will take care of everybody. These are quotes from him. There will be better health care for more people at lesser cost. The plan that will replace Obamacare will let you have access to your doctor, and you will be able to choose the plan you want. You'll be, if you have a pre-existing condition, you'll be covered, and your children will also be able to be on their parents' plans, and he will not touch Medicare in the process of doing this. Who here thinks that that's possible in politics today, a plan that encompasses all of that? So you got some optimism there about that. Why do you think that, Charles?
Well, I'm going back to what they said. There's some of Obamacare people really like. I don't think it's at this point it's going to work to completely junk it. It's going to have to be fixed. They're going to have the holes and the stuff that were rushed through that are not going to work, not ever going to work, that are just driving cost up. It's got to be fixed. But whatever we come up with, it's not going to work unless we come up with some way to pay for it. That's the way we've got to. How are we going to pay for this?
Sino, go ahead.
May I ask the panel a question?
Sure. Yes.
How many of you would like to see a single-payer system?
4 of you. You're ambivalent.
I lived in Canada for a year. It took a long time to see doctors. That I injured my knee, and we'll take care of it, but we're 3 months, it's 3 months away before we can do anything about it. Single payer sounds nice, doesn't always work.
Justin, you were going to say.
Well, that's why when you read all the things and we all know President Trump never tries to, greatly enhance things that don't actually turn out to be true. But putting that aside, I just don't, as the other gentleman said, how is he going to pay for all that? I noticed how in those quotes he never even bothered to promote any evidence or somewhat a shred of proof to make people that are not just that have blinders for him to believe that he's going to be able to do all that. And we've got to remember that thankfully he's a president, not a dictator, so he's going to have to deal with Congress. He's also going to have to deal with the insurance companies. They're going to obviously want to have a big say in that. So just for him to spout, it's going to be the best, the greatest, the most wonderful thing possible is just not realistic in my opinion.
That's right.
Go ahead.
There's an old joke about communist Russia, and I may be quoting President Reagan or not, I forget, but I don't want to do any fake news, so I'm not going to deliberately ascribe that to him. But the joke was, Russian man Boris had just requested that his leaky faucet be fixed. And the plumber goes, sure, I'll be there in 5 years. And, I'll be there on Thursday at 5 years. And so Boris responds to the plumber and goes, what time are you coming? And the plumber goes, what does it matter? It's 5 years from now. He goes, well, I got a morning appointment with the eye doctor then.
Sheila, let me ask you a question more broadly about politics. Can you remember the last time you changed your mind about a big political issue?
Yes. Vietnam.
From what to what?
From pro to get us out of here.
And tell me a little bit about that story.
Well, at the time, I was married to a naval officer. And so we really thought, and even before the active involvement, I remember meeting him at the library and saying, they just assassinated the president of South Vietnam. And I mean, we were really wrapped up in it. And Gulf of Tonkin, we believed it. And then we found out that the Gulf of Tonkin incident didn't happen. And we had been sucked into a civil war on the other side of the world.
Anybody here who's changed their mind about a political issue recently? Yeah, Isaiah.
I have recently, well, I wouldn't say recently either, but I have changed my mind on the issue of LGBT. As I was growing up in the small community that I interacted with, we did not like homosexuals, period. It was a neighborhood, social, accepted bigotry. And growing up, you learn things, you open your mind, you deal with things, and come to find out, I know a lot of homosexuals. And to paraphrase a lot of foolishness, some of the best people I know are homosexual people. Plus, if we're going to extend the guarantees and protection of the Constitution to everybody, then why exclude a group based on someone else's perception of are they worthy of it or not? So my entire philosophy on how to deal with homosexuality has completely changed, and it has become a personal freedom type thing. It has nothing to do with your sexuality. If the state's going to get involved in regulating things, then the state needs to make sure it's giving everybody the same fair shot.
Gina, how do you stay informed?
Beg your pardon?
How do you stay informed about current affairs?
On the internet.
And what do you read when you're on the internet? Do you seek out something that might contradict you, something that might agree with you? How do you look for news on the internet?
Actually, I have a smartphone that I use, and I look up topics and Google, the wonderful thing that Google is. It comes back and it shoots me the topics that I look at, and so I get it every day. I get one. And so, interestingly enough, I just got the one about Ivanka Trump and about the plan that she was pushing through for child care. It just came to me today. So I was like, oh, okay, that's something to talk about. But it's there every day. Even if I don't do that, I go on my Yahoo account and there's news on there attached to that. So it's kind of easy to do now.
Barb, does the press give Donald Trump does the press give Donald Trump a fair shake?
Not always. But some of it's his fault, I think.
Should the press be more gentle on Donald Trump, or what should the posture of the press be towards the president?
Well, I don't, pardon me. I don't think they should make fake news. They should tell it like it is.
David, you were going to.
Well, I don't think the media is too hard on Trump. When you report what he says, and then he calls it fake news, you kind of have to wonder where he's coming from. It's like Donald Trump said this, and it's reported, and he comes back the next morning, no, I didn't say that. That's fake news. Wait a minute, here's the sound clip. You said it. No, I never said that. That's fake news. The media's really not hard enough on him, I don't think.
Can I say something?
You may indeed.
A lot of the things that President Trump says, he doesn't make it clear what he really means, and then people hear it and they think something else, and then he have to explain what he really meant, which I don't know if that's really what he meant or not, but a lot of the things he says is not really clear.
Justin, you and Charles both mentioned some numbers you thought weren't being correctly reported when in previous answers you gave government statistics. Where do you go for truth? Where do you go for something that you know, well, that's something I can believe?
It's hard to know what truth is these days. One of the things I don't like about President Trump is he lumps all media together. We all know, with the lady over there mentioned with the smartphone, you could access so many different news organizations, outlets, blogs. So there isn't just one static, monolithic media. But to go to your question before, I really like to read news from all different sources, more mainstream sources like yourself and then NBC and Fox and then, well, I know Fox News, they would say it's more to the right, but I'm just talking about like Fox broadcast channel. And then more to the right, The Blaze, and then the Drudge Report, and to the left, The Salon and Huffington Post. So I like to get a hodgepodge of them all, and then just try to make an informed decision based upon what I read and what I hear. But frankly, it seems as though the more information you process, it's sometimes harder to find the truth in a way.
President Trump said that the press is the enemy of the American people. Has anybody ever felt that now or at any other time? Has there been a time that anybody's felt that that's been the case? Aaron.
I don't mean it as strongly as that, but everybody, one of the reasons that people get indignant about the press is supposed to be so completely unbiased and report the facts and the news exactly how it's happening without interjecting their own opinion in there. And the problem is, humans are biased, and the press is comprised, my perception is the press is comprised mostly of people who lean to the left. So of course they're going to report it that way. Their views differ than mine. Now, people who are in the media that are on the right, they're biased to the right, and they will interject their own opinion. So I just think that the concept that the press is completely unbiased is dead, and it goes back to the days of Walter Cronkite, where it was that was gospel because he said it, and it's not true.
Yes.
Really from a standpoint, to me, I don't think there's anything wrong with the news to asking the hard questions, and to me though, they focus too much on the negative stuff. I know the other night, the only channel, which was Fox, that was broadcasting when he had all the coal workers in there, when he said, they were the only channel that broadcasted and reported that night. That was something good, because Senator Manchin was there, who's a Democrat, was there. But they seemed to focus on, yes, he does missteps, but the man's only been in office for a little over 30 days. He's going to be there for 4 years. I'm giving him 4 years to make a difference. And I just think that's what they need to focus on, the good and the bad. I don't have a problem with that.
Has anybody changed their mind about anything recently about in the political world? We'll move on to the next question. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. Sorry, Charles.
Well, I'd say my confidence in the government is starting to slip a little bit. That's been my major change. For our representative government, our form of representative government to work, there has to be a level of cooperation and collaboration between the executive branch and the legislative branch. Well, starting with President Clinton, we saw less of that, and it got worse under President Bush. It got much worse under President Obama with his, we can't wait, in trying to bypass the legislature, and it's getting even worse under President Trump. President Obama had the backing of most of the government agencies, and they supported him. Well, President Trump doesn't have that support because he's an outsider, and I'm concerned about executive overreach becoming entranced in our system of government, that the executive branch is taking way too much power, and I think it's undermined my confidence in the government.
I guess my change came with Trump. Initially, and I voted for Trump in the primaries. And what I liked about him to begin with was he didn't apologize. Every politician we have says something to this group, and then these people are mad. Oh, well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Yeah, you did. You said it. Just stay with what you said. Or if you make a mistake, say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, but don't apologize for what you said. And I like that. As the campaign went on, he was wrong, and he got away from just saying factual things or semi-factual things and not apologizing for it. He began to deny what he was saying rather than own up to what he was saying. So I guess that's the change. And then I voted for Hillary in the election.
Aaron, and then I'll come to you, George.
I changed my mind on the view of the election. I originally thought that it was a miracle. It was the strangest election we'd ever seen for X, Y, and Z reason. But then when I went back and remembered history, this election was the result was one of the more traditional results we ever had, because typically speaking, one party holds the White House for 8 years, the next party takes over. Bush had the first Bush had the exception there, but I think the country went as predicted, actually, rather than it being the most unpredictable thing to ever happen.
George, you wanted to add something?
I think part of the problem, and you saw it especially amplified during the Obama's administration, what we have is the Congress, the two parties, are failing to even compromise and work together. Now Trump, a lot of what he's done with his executive orders is to overturn Obama's executive orders. If the Congress had worked together and had passed laws to address a lot of the issues that we have in this country, they would not be so easily overturned.
Gina, let me ask you a foreign policy question. Russia, friend or foe?
They are a foe. They've always kind of been a foe. But I do think that they've taken in refugees, so I'm trying to figure out why we think that we shouldn't when they have. So they can't be all bad. So I mean, I know there are things that they do and that they're wrong, but at least they do that. So
Have you followed the news with respect to the president and Russia? Is that of importance to you or interest to you at all?
It does. It does. I've heard, actually, I think they had a boat that was off the island of Virginia and that was coming in. I'm like, what's that mean? Are they spying on us? Are they trying to listen on us? And is that going to go over? What are they going to do anything about it? I mean, is it going to be more spying or more hooking up, more under the cover kind of transactions with Russia? So I'm a little bit worried about that.
Isaiah, there have been a lot of town hall meetings recently in the news the last couple of weeks, people protesting, talking to their members of Congress. Do you think a member of Congress has to stand for that? Should that be part of the job, that they have to go and talk to their constituents and be out there available to the people that vote for them?
Actually, I do think that should be part of their jobs, even though maybe not in a mass sitting type way. They have offices, they have telephones, they have emails. I communicate with my representatives and my senators. I don't go down and protest per se, unless something's really pressing. But when the people are upset to the point where they generically feel like they have to express themselves personally to their representative, then I think they should have the right to do so. It should never reach that point if the representative has the pulse of his constituents. So if you got this situation, we have a lack of communication between the representative and his so-called constituents. So I don't know where to place the blame. In my opinion, the people are always right.
Aaron, go.
I think they should do town halls, but town halls are a show. They're a show for the congressman or the senator to show that they're out there with the people. They're a show for the protesters who show up and make a statement. Does anything really get done? Does any minds get changed? Absolutely not. And now Dave Bratch just had one that was an interesting town hall. I find it interesting that Tim Kaine in Virginia won't do real town halls. He has his staff go do them. But at the end of the day, they're really just a show for both sides.
Who here feels more engaged in the political process after the election? Are any of you engaged more, writing more letters?
Well, this would be one of my more engagement after the election. I believe that observing all the dysfunction of the election, I would think that having term limits would eliminate some of this dysfunction. Just one term maybe in each of the federally elected offices. I think that way people are more focused about what they need to do rather than focusing on getting reelected.
Pat, what would you do to change the system? If you could do one thing, what would you do to fix politics?
Well, I agree with Sinu to term limits, maybe more than just one. Certainly, if term limits were in a thing, Mitch McConnell wouldn't be where he is for so long. And, this whole thing with doing the Obama administration is that he would say no. His job was to say no, and that's just wrong. He wouldn't even talk to the Obama administration about anything that they wanted to do. It was just no. It was almost like if they said the sun was shining, he said, no, it's not. It's just like, to me, a term limit would have not allowed that.
Now, there's some Democrats who think that's the way to go with President Trump, to deny that the sun is shining. What do you think about that?
I don't really agree with that, but it's kind of like, what else can they do? And they just kind of feel like, well, we do the same thing you did. We use the same, rules that you used.
Yeah.
As much as I hate to say it, I wish we could go back to Reagan, Tip O'Neill. Now, I'm not a big Reagan fan, but they had battles during the day that were epic. And then they went and found a bar someplace, had a couple of drinks, and hammered out details, and the government moved on. Both sides gave a little bit, both sides took a little bit, and the government moved smoothly. And we just don't have that anymore.
Sheila, what would you do if you could, not just advice to the president, but is there a reform of the system you would?
I think that the moderate Republican has gone the way of the dodo bird, unfortunately, because that's what I grew up with. And that's why I didn't consider myself aligned with either party. The vicious partisanship, and it's so extreme. I don't know how to tell them to get over it. But until they do, this republic is endangered.
Who else feels like the republic is in danger?
Well, to me, if I had one message I would tell Trump is he needs to open up, and I think a good line of communication would be to use Pence as vice president, being that he was in the Congress, that both sides in Congress, they need to talk to each other. They have quit talking to each other. There was no bigger obstructionist in the U.S. Senate than Harry Reid. Even his own party complained about it, that he didn't let stuff come to the floor to debate stuff. My thing with Trump is he needs to address them. He needs to bring Democrats in. He needs to talk with Republicans. He needs to form a line of communication, not just between him and the Congress, but so that the Congress talks to each other. Both parties talk. It's all about with them winning or losing. It's not about what's best for the country.
Isaiah, people have been saying that for a while. They want the country to come together. But they've been saying it for a while. Do you think it's possible?
Yes.
For the politicians, I'm sorry. Do you think it's possible for the politicians to come together?
It's possible for the politicians to come together if we could somehow do away with gerrymandering. It appears we have come to a point where the politicians are seeking their constituents rather than the constituents seeking a good representative. So we're picking winners and losers and ignoring what's really going on in the districts. Whereas if we didn't gerrymander the districts, so all the Republicans over there, it might only be 2 of them, but they get the same vote as the 200,000 Democrats over there because they're in another district and they have to have equal representation. So we're not really getting majority rule. We're getting the smart guys are winning, but not by popularity.
Barb, what would you do if you could change the system or fix the political system?
Well, I don't think that people should be in Congress for, say, more than 8 years. There should be a limit, that we could have new, fresh ideas and things.
All right, I think I'm going to ask the final question. This is for all of you. So you're all going to have to come up with an answer. And
Do you mind if I jump in on?
Sure, Aaron. Yeah.
I just want to say, they use term limits as a populist thing to attract people on all sides, that this is the way we fix Congress. The problem with saying that term limits are a solution is it empowers the money people more, empowers the party bosses, it empowers the consultants that run the candidates, because they'll be the ones picking the next congressman if it happens every length of time. There's not going to be the competition as so much that it exists now. It's a bad idea.
Has anyone here, does anyone have a member of their family here that will be directly affected by a policy that Donald Trump has talked about, or who thinks about that has a direct relationship with the government and is concerned one way or the other about President Trump's policies?
I mentioned it before. I am very much looking forward to the repealing and replacing of Obamacare because it directly affects my mother. The current system raised her rates in the middle of chemotherapy $1,300 a month. It's absolutely insane. And to say that that policy is helping people, it needs to go, it needs to be replaced.
And you feel like the replacement will be better than what she's got now?
It has to be.
All right, the final question. Gina, I'll start with you. So it's 20 years from now, and you're talking to the next generation, and you're telling them what happened in the Trump years and how it ended. What story do you tell them?
The expectation is going to be high, has been high for the beginning, and I think it's going to dwindle down. I don't think there's going to be much changes to Obamacare. I don't think there's going to be changes to the economy that much. He's going to make the rules that he's made. They're going to be in place, probably the ones that are close that what he's making now. And then I think it's just going to whiz through for the next 3 years, 3 or 4 years.
George, it's 20 years from now. You're talking to the next generation about the Trump years. How does the story end?
I think that's a story that hasn't been written yet. It's like you say, like I said before, he's only been in office a little over 30 days. That will, a large part, depend on the country. The best thing I could tell future generations, if I was going to say something to them, that if you want change in government, if you want government to be different, you need to be involved in government. Yeah. More people in this country need to become involved with the process. How we make the sausage, whatever they need to contact it, they need to vote. We have a terrible voting in the country, the percentage of this country that goes and votes. Yeah. We need to participate. I know this because just from a local end where I've become more involved in a local HOA that I belong to, things don't change. Believe me, an HOA is almost as bad as this country, the way it's run. But you have to become involved. You just can't sit on the sidelines. You have to vote.
Charles, based on the way you see things happening now and what you think about this president and this country, how do you think it looks 20 years from now?
Well, I think we'd have to tell future generations that unless President Trump can turn things around, that we dropped the ball. I mean, unelected bureaucrats in these agencies are getting more and more power over our lives every single day. And I don't see any change on the horizon for that. Maybe I'm being pessimistic that maybe President Trump can make some changes, but over the last 20 or 30 years, the acceleration in the 8 unelected government agencies having control over your lives. You can do this in business. You can't do that in business. You know, you can't do this. You can't do that. You must follow this environmental regulation. You must do this or that. And these people have never been elected. They've never been. Who said that these people could tell us what to do? And it's getting worse all the time. And if that trend continues, we're going to have to tell the future generations that we dropped the ball and we let it happen.
Isaiah, you're talking to the future generation in 20 years. You're talking to somebody and saying that the Trump era happened and this is what happened. What's that story going to sound like?
That story is going to sound like the citizenry dropped the ball. Donald Trump, good, bad, or indifferent, it's not the problem. The problem is there are people that like Donald Trump. There are people that hate Donald Trump. There's a larger group of people that did not vote. And until we get a consensus from the population about who's being elected to represent all the people, then you're going to get this minority rule, which is what we have. I don't care what you think about Donald Trump. He did not win the popular vote. He's not speaking for me. And I hate to say it, but out of that entire Republican group, he was by far the best they had to offer. I'm talking to the future. That was a sick situation. I'm saying as a citizen of this country, you must do your duty. You must register, you must vote, you must participate in the system. This is your government. It's not the plutocrats or the oligarchs. The vote belongs to the individual. I'm all about the individual. And I think even our founding fathers, half of them owned slaves. And they telling everybody else around the world that all men are created equal. What the hell wrong with them? Obviously, they didn't believe it. If that was true, they would not have owned slaves. Not to say that was good or bad, right or wrong. I'm just saying, if all men are created equal, how can you not treat all men equally? We have that same situation now with lack of citizen participation. I would tell the future, don't ever let that happen again. Turn the idiot box off, turn Fox News off, and NBC and CBS, turn them all off, and start talking to your family, start talking to your friends, start talking to your neighbors, because we are the government.
Sinu?
After the election, my 2 daughters were so despondent. I said, Daddy, how did this happen? And poll after poll predicted Hillary Clinton would have won, and they were in their school, they had their own election, and they, by vast majority, they voted for Hillary Clinton in the school. So they were surprised that it was reversed. And I explained to them, sweetheart, if you look at the overall history of the US, we have survived many elections. And this is another election that will survive and will become stronger because of this.
Aaron?
Let's see, 20 years from now, when I talk about this time, I'm going to say there was a politician running for president who planned her entire life and thought she was entitled to it. She lost to Donald Trump. And anything Donald Trump did do, didn't do, wouldn't do, tried to do, is infinitely better than anything Hillary Clinton would have done.
Pat, what's the story you're going to tell to that next generation?
I'm thinking about the Electoral College, and in the Constitution, that was why they set up the Electoral College. So if there was any indication of an impropriety in an election, then, you know, they were to come together and they would make the decision. And there was so much speculation and stuff of what Russia had done, emails, and all of these questions that came up right before the election that may or may not have, caused Hillary to lose. But the Electoral College, I don't think they performed the way the Founding Fathers expected them to.
Barb, what story would you tell?
I would tell that in the debates that people needed to pay more attention to who they were voting for, and they needed to get out and vote and to know information about people instead of just voting the party.
Sheila, how about you?
Well, hopefully I won't have to explain it to him in Russian. Because that is a big concern to me. I don't want this country to end up a client state to Russia. And it can happen very easily. There's a lot that needs investigating yet. And what will be told in 20 years depends strongly on that.
Let me just detour here for a second. George, you're a fan of the president's, a supporter, and you've argued for giving him a little space. He's only been there for a month. How do you think through the question of Russia meddling in the election and the president's relationship with Russia? What's your opinion about that?
Well, to me, the president, I know, to me, yes, if we can, we need a good working relation with Russia. But if you go back to the previous administration, the Russians went into Ukraine and took Crimea. The world stood by. We've let them go. They crossed the red line, the Syrians did in the red line, and we let the Russians come in there. We are the shining light of the free world. And to me, you don't back off from bullies, and Russia is a bully. Make no mistake, we should have learned this lesson back. I've heard Hitler's name and Nazis talked about. You have to confront bullies. And to me, yes, if we need to agree with Russia on what we can agree with. But what we can't, and when they cross that line, we need to confront them.
All right, David, the question to you, 20 years from now.
I would tell them, pay attention. Talk to people, know what you're voting for, and vote. Because if you don't vote, or you don't know why you're voting, you're stuck with what you get.
Justin?
I think I would tell the next generation the importance of maybe just abolishing the whole party system to begin with. I mean, President Washington warned about the factions and how they could erode the base and foundation of a country. And I think a lot of people sat on the sidelines for this election because they didn't like either candidate. I think some people had serious issues with Hillary Clinton, having another Clinton in office. They didn't want a dynasty type thing, and essentially like Bush 2.0, obviously different side, but I think different side of the same coin. And then a lot of people were repulsed by Donald Trump. So they were like, gosh, well, and I'm not going to necessarily quote unquote waste my vote on a third party candidate. Honestly, I think the whole party system should be abolished. I think that the Supreme Court really hurt our republic by saying money equals speech and just allowing all the third parties to dump in as much money and bringing in foreign money and the like into, interfere with our elections. I feel like the whole system, there needs to be a complete sea change.
All right. Thank you. Oh, yeah, Pat.
I agree with the gentleman that we do need more than just two parties. We need a third party. And my hope had been when Bernie Sanders, ran in the primary, that he would enhance the independent party. But by running as a Democrat, that didn't happen because a lot of the people that supported him, they disappeared. And I think some of those people sat on the sideline.
All right, thanks to all of you. We'll be back here in 20 years to talk to all of you about your feelings.
I don't think I'll be here.
I think you will be. Thank you all very much. It was really a pleasure talking to all of you. I'm really grateful that you spent so much time with us. Thank you.